So we say that one of the important solid solutions which will help us in understanding the concept of steel is the solid solution of carbon in octahedral sites of FCC iron or gamma iron, which is at a temperature greater than 912 degrees. So at room temperature you have alpha iron, whereas at high temperature means that greater than 912 you will have gamma iron, which is called austenite. Although we will study later that it may be possible to retain this austenite even at room temperature by certain interventions, by certain alloying elements. So what I show you here is the unit cell of alpha iron, BCC, and then we have the unit cell of gamma iron, which is FCC. Along with that, the lattice constant is also shown. And we can very well understand that how we have calculated that. This is calculated based upon the relationship between A, which is this actually the lattice constant, and R. We already have established that the R is the atomic radius. What you observe here is that in a BCC unit cell, this is the location of the octahedral void. So we are actually trying to show the location of the only octahedral voids. It's just an example. Octahedral voids. Although I have not covered this because it will take more time. So, but when you come to this topic here, that is the right hand figure for FCC or CCP structure, we have evaluated that one of the octahedral voids is available here at the center of the unit cell. At the center of the unit cell, and that is where the interstitial carbon atom will be located if it is located in the octahedral voids of your FCC structure. If in the BCC also the octahedral void is located now at the face center. So this is the face center where the octahedral void is located, and this is the body center atom 1. The second body center atom is 2, and the corner atoms are 3, 4, 5, and 6. Similarly, for FCC, we already know that the location of the octahedral void is at the center of this. We already have said that the size, as far as the size is concerned, we understand that as far as size is concerned, this void in the case of FCC is having a larger void size, and we have derived that also. The void size in the case of your BCC happens to be smaller as compared to FCC. So, although as I already said that when we already discussed about FCC, this transformation from alpha to gamma, we said your gamma iron is more densely packed. It has higher density than your BCC. That is why the volume reduction was observed. That is why I explained it in the last class. The interstitial sites are larger. The interstitial sites are still larger in the case of FCC, although it has a higher density, although it has a higher packing factor. It has a 0.74 packing factor, whereas for BCC it was lesser than this. But the number of interstitials is now less. The number of interstitials is more in the case of BCC, more sites I can say, and then here we have less sites as compared to your BCC structure. And this will tell me that why the solubility limit is different for different type of crystal structure. So the solubility limit was 2% as far as the solubility limit of carbon in iron was 2% for FCC, whereas for at room temperature it was 0.002%. It's quite less, and this is one of the reasons the sites are larger in the case of FCC. There's another reason which we'll take up here. Another reason for that, another reason for this higher solubility in the FCC, in addition to your the size of the interstitial, is the shape of the interstitial. When we talk about gamma iron here, which we say the FCC unit cell, we have said that the interstitial was here, and this interstitial is a regular interstitial. Means if I talk about the A value of 3.592 angstroms being a cubic one, so this is 3.592 angstroms is here, and same is here, and same is here, because it is all A in a cubic system. In that case, when I talk about this impurity carbon atom, which is sitting here at the center of this unit cell, and when I try to find out the distance between the nearest neighbors, this comes to A by 2. This comes to A by 2. The other one also comes to A by 2. This one is also A by 2, and from the top also it is A by 2. So it is it's a regular octahedral. Whereas when I look at the BCC system now, and then try to locate the interstitial now. We already said that in this case, the interstitial is here. So this is your interstitial atom sitting at the face of the unit cell. And when I consider this now, the lattice spacing happens to be 2.866 angstroms here. So is it a regular octahedron or something is different? We observe that it is not a regular one, although this happens to be still A by 2. This happens to be A by 2. That means the body center atoms are located at A by 2, whereas this one is different now. This one is different now. This one will be different, which we say is A root 2 upon 2. So this becomes what we call as distorted interstitial, whereas this one happens to be a regular interstitial. So this is another reason why we find that the solubility is less. So the carbon atoms in BCC iron, they do not find space to occupy the interstitial sites, although the number of sites are larger here, but still their size is smaller, their shape is distorted, and that is why carbon atoms do not form a solid, their solubility limit is less. Whereas in the case of our FCC lattice here, which is at gamma ion, we find that although the number of sites are smaller, are less, but their size is larger and the void size is more regular, and that is why we observe that the solubility limit happens to be almost 100 times higher than the BCC. That's 2%. But keep it in mind that I'm referring to 2% here in terms of weight percentage. We will, in our next slide, we'll try to calculate this, that how does it formulate in the form of atomic percentage. Okay, so coming to this again, we already have said that the carbon goes into the octahedral sites of your FCC iron, and going by that, we already said that there is one octahedral void per iron atom in your FCC iron. We already have calculated this. There is one octahedral void per atom, which means that the geometric limit for filling the voids happens to be that for each iron atom which is present in your system, in the solution here, for each iron atom which is present, one carbon atom can be accommodated. Means 50% of carbon in iron is possible theoretically. Theoretically, it is possible to have 50%, 50 atomic percent now, not weight percent, 50 atomic percent of carbon in iron. As far as the geometrical limit is concerned, we already said what is the meaning of the geometrical limit to solubility. Based upon this geometrical limit, it is possible that maybe 50% of the 50% must be the solubility of carbon, 50 atomic percentage must be the solubility of carbon in iron. I can try to calculate the weight percent of this. We can try to convert it into weight percent using a standard formulation. So I can do it very easily for a 2-element alloy using this formulation, which we says is available in most of the textbooks here. So we'll not go into the details. Going by this, what is the Values here C1, C2 are the weight percentage of constituent 1 and 2. C1 dash and C2 dash are the atomic percentages of 1 and 2, and A1, A2 are just the atomic weights. Based upon this calculation, when I do for the atomic weights of carbon and iron, and upon their atomic percentage is 50%, we find that theoretically speaking, the geometrical solubility limit of carbon, in iron is actually 18 weight percent. 18% by weight. Whereas the actual observed one is just 2.1%. 2.1%. So that means actually theoretically it may be possible to occupy, let's say, have 18 weight percentage of solid solubility of carbon in gamma iron, but we already know that although the octahedral sites are larger, but still they are not as large as the carbon atom. So that is why they will put a lot of distortion in the lattice, and that is one of the reasons why we find that the solubility limit happens to be quite less. It is just 2%, nearly 2% or 2.1%. So this is one understanding which we need to keep it in mind in regarding the solid solutions are concerned. Okay. So now coming to the second type of solid solution, which we say is now the substitutional type, and I take the example of copper nickel system. So what we have one just copper atoms available to us. We say when you start putting nickel into it, nickel starts taking the what we call as, it is not going into the interstitial sites, it is occupying the lattice points, and that is why now it is occupying the lattice points here. And it may be possible that, okay, this may be 100% nickel. So this is 100% nickel, this is 100% copper. In between, we find that the solubility limits, there are no geometrical limits. All of them can be replaced by nickel atoms, and all the nickel atoms can be replaced by copper atoms, and that is why we find that in most of your solid solutions which are of substitutional type, the solubility limit may not be there. There is no solubility limit, but there may be few substitutional solutions like what we refer to as alpha brass, which is a substitutional solid solution of copper and zinc. We find that there is a limitation, there is a limit, and we will try to give it a reason that what is the reason for that. We will not try to give it a reason, we will try to understand the reasons for that. The reasons for this were already given by Rothery and Hume, and they are known as the Hume-Rothery or Rothery-Hume rules for alloy formation. And we'll just briefly touch upon what are these rules, what are these conditions which must be met for two type of elements to combine together to form an alloy. So we find here that there are some features, there are several features actually of solute and solvent which determine the degree to which they are dissolvable in each other, and they are represented as the Hume-Rothery rules. The basic four parameters which are important, these features or parameters, the four parameters are crystal structure, that is important, that is what is the crystal structure of the solute and what is the crystal structure of the solvent. The atomic size factor, again with respect to solute and solvent, electronegativity factor and valence factor for solute and solvent atoms. So these are the four parameters which are important to us, which dictate what kind of whether they will form an alloy or whether they will not form an alloy. So the first one happens to be the crystal structure. So when I talk about the crystal structure effect, one thing which is very clear is that for appreciable solid solubility, when the solid solubility needs to be very high, appreciable means high solubility, the crystal structure of the two atom types must be same. The crystal structure must be same. Then they will have appreciable amount of solid solubility or high solubility will be observed if they have the same crystal structure. This is what we observed in the case of a copper-nickel system. Copper and nickel both have FCC structure, and that is why we find that they are completely soluble in each other. The limit is not there at all. On the other hand, when you talk about another solid solution, which I referred in my last slide here as this one, alpha brass, where we said that it's a solution of copper and zinc. So when we talk about copper and zinc solid solution, which is said as alpha brass, so copper and zinc. I'll come to this in a moment. Before going to do this, we said that we have copper and nickel solution. Both of them, copper and nickel, both have the same crystal structure, FCC, and that is why it is completely soluble. Means there is no limit onto that. So they form an substitutional solution. Similarly, when we on the same line we talk about copper, which is again we say FCC, and zinc, which is HCP, hexagonal close pack. So although copper and zinc can form alpha brass, which we say is a substitutional solid solution of copper and zinc, but the solubility is limited because zinc has a HCP structure and copper has a FCC structure. So this is the importance of the term crystal structure as well as in forming solid solutions is concerned. Same crystal structure will give you almost complete solubility or very high solubility, whereas a different one will limit that. So that's what we already said, that this has a limited solubility. This is just the data available to us for a copper nickel system. So we already said that copper nickel system, both of them are FCC, and if you look at this atomic radius, the atomic radius of copper and nickel is almost similar, and this is where we say that it follows the rules suggested by Hume and Rothery. The next slide will tell us what is the rule regarding the radius is concerned. So right now I'm using this just to tell you about the first rule, which was regarding crystal structure. Because they have the same crystal structure, that is why they can have almost complete solubility. They're totally soluble in each other. Keep a note that they have almost same atomic radii. Their atomic radii is also very similar, very close to each other. If one of them is smaller, they will go for interstitial type. Because they are similar, that is why they are going for a substitutional type of solid solution. And similarly, take a note of the electronegativity factor also. Now, coming to the atomic size factor, which is the second consideration for Hume-Rothery rules, we say that you can accommodate appreciable quantities if the difference in the atomic radii between the two atoms is less than or about 15%. The difference must not be nearly 15%. If that is the case, then appreciable quantities can be accommodated, means complete solubility can be observed. This is what I already showed you in the data, that their atomic radii is almost similar. So the difference happens to be less than 15% here. And that is why we find that these two elements are completely soluble in each other. And the size difference is just 2.5% or 3% to be specific. And that is why they form a completely soluble substitutional solid solution. Then coming to your third factor, which we say is important to us, is the electronegativity factor. So there are four factors: crystal structure factor, the atomic radii factor, or the atom size factor. The third one is the electronegativity factor, and the fourth one will be the valence factor. So electronegativity factor says that more electropositive one element happens to be, and if the difference is large, the greater is the likelihood that they will form an intermetallic compound instead of a solid solution. Similarly, when we talk about the fourth factor, which we say is the valence factor, if everything else is equal, everything else in the previous three factors is equal, a metal has more of a tendency to dissolve another metal of higher valency than to dissolve one of lower valency. So these are the four parameters. We say the four parameters were crystal structure. The second one was atomic radius or atom size or atomic radius. The third one is the electronegativity factor, and the fourth one is the valence factor, which were actually given by Hume and Rothery for being the factors for alloy formation. And keep it in mind, almost all of the material science is empirical. Means all of these things were actually observed first during experimentation, and later on they have actually try to correlate them with the help of certain rules, with the help of certain observations. So they basically are first observations through experiments, and then the reasoning has been looked for. Same is the case for your discussion on crystal structure. We said it was assumed that metals or have a crystalline structure, they are arranged in a way, and later on it was proved. So same thing happens in many, almost all the things which are happening which are established in material science in what we'll be studying here. Okay. Now, after that discussion on alloy formation, let's come to a more realistic thing. So whatever our discussions have been, our discussions earlier has been about crystals, and we say in that context we refer to unit cells. So we said, what is a crystal? A crystal is nothing but a repetitive arrangement of unit cells. So you have a number of unit cells which are stacked here, and that they create what we call as a crystal. So when I talk about crystals here, our unit cell consideration was actually more about one of the unit cells, how the atoms are arranged in a single unit cell, and then we said that these unit cells put together, they start forming a crystal or a grain. Now, when I talk about most of your engineering materials, they are all what we call as polycrystalline materials. They are crystalline, like metals like iron, aluminium, copper, nickel. They are all crystalline materials, crystalline metals, but they are polycrystalline, means you can grow single crystals, no doubt it is possible for us to grow single crystals, but for engineering, for your structural applications, for our mechanical engineers, we are more concerned about polycrystalline materials. That means they contain a number of crystals. So what I'm trying to tell you here in these figures here is the formation of crystals in a very simple way. So what is happening here is that you can find that this resembles these squares here resemble what we call as a unit cell. So what is happening is that in these domains, that this one crystal is growing here. So the unit cells are getting arranged in one orientation. So can you see that the orientation of the unit cells is same in a single crystal. So you will find that it is growing like this. Similarly, another crystal is growing in this region, and it has unit cells oriented in a different way. The orientation is different. Here it is another crystal is growing, and the orientation is here. So it will keep on adding unit cells to itself. Each crystal will keep on adding unit cells here, and they will keep on growing. So we'll say it is called crystal growth, or these crystals are also referred to as grains. So grains as well as the term crystals, they are the same terms as far as our discussion is concerned. So what we observe here that they are growing, and from this condition we come to the second condition. So we find that they have grown now, and now they start interfering with each other. We find that they start interfering with each other. There is no way now this growth can happen. So because this crystal, if you find, now it is stuck here. It is stuck here. Now it cannot grow according to its own orientation. It cannot grow. So we find here that the crystals which were growing here, they are actually now when they come close to each other, and then they come to condition C, where now we find that okay, now almost everything is crystallized. But what is the problem? The problem now happens to be that all the crystals are having different orientations. That is, grains are having different orientations. And now this is what we say is a polycrystalline material. So this happens to be your polycrystalline material, which is now having grains which have grown in different orientations. So if I talk about this grain A, grain B, grain C, D, E, all of them, A, B, C, D, and so on, they have got different orientations. Their orientation is different. Orientation is different means, if you recall our discussion now, that is where your Miller indices and of directions and planes will come to your understanding that what is the meaning of this orientation here. Means in this crystal A that the planes are oriented. Now this may be your one set of planes which is growing, one set of planes, but in the crystal B the planes are oriented in a different manner. So that is what is observed in the case of most of the polycrystalline materials, that the different grains, they are polycrystalline, and in addition to that we observe that these different grains have got different orientation of the unit cells. And what happens because of this, when I talked about unit cells, we said that you have certain close packed directions, not that close packed. And we introduced that because of this close packing, if it is the FCC1, we find that this happens to be the close pack direction. Similarly, this will be the close pack direction. These are the close pack directions in FCC. So we said that the interstomic spacing is different amongst this direction and the other direction, and that is why we find that crystals, single crystals, will behave what we call as anisotropically. Because in single crystal, what we find that all the unit cells are oriented in one particular way, and that is why if I consider it only representing one, we find that all the properties will be different along this direction and different along some other direction, which has a different what we say linear density. We introduce these concepts. What happens in the case of a polycrystalline material? A polycrystalline material will actually normally be isotropic. It will be isotropic because the orientation of the grains happens to be random. So this orientation of grains is random. They are randomly oriented. We are not giving them what we call as a preferred orientation. So we are not right now giving them a preferred orientation. We are saying they are randomly oriented, and that is why a polycrystalline material behaves isotropically. Although at individual crystal level they are anisotropic, but because there are millions of crystals available to us in a material in a bulk volume, and all of them are randomly oriented, which gives the isotropy. But as I said, it is possible for us to orient the grains in one preferred orientation also. And once I do that, what this preferred orientation will do? This preferred orientation will introduce anisotropy. This preferred orientation will give anisotropy to your even bulk solids, bulk metals. And we use this concept. It is quite a useful concept. We use it in very specific applications. One of the common applications which you can find on internet happens to be, all of you have used a Coke can or any soft drink can. If you see a Coke can, we find that it is made of aluminum, a very thin aluminum as a sheet, and it is very deep drawn. Means it is a very a Coke can be very something like this, very deep drawn. If you take your normal polycrystalline material, deep drawing is not possible. Drawing this much of deep will create what we call as problems during manufacturing. There are cracks and other things are observed. To create these Coke cans, what is done is that the material is given a preferred orientation. And once they do that, this gives you this makes possible the making of the soft drink cans or Coke cans that we can call them as. So there are many applications where we actually use this anisotropy, which we create using preferred orientation. Actually, there is a complete what we refer to as a topic or a subject on which is called OIM. It is orientation imaging microscopy. So you actually can find the orientation of grains in polycrystalline materials using a microscope. OIM is a technique which we use. Another name for that is EBSD, electron backscatter diffraction, which is attachment which is used for your FESEM or SEM, scanning electron microscope. So with the help of a scanning electron microscope and a EBSD attachment, we may be able to find out the relative orientation of these grains, which otherwise is quite difficult because these grains are too large in number. But we may be able to do it these days, and we do that. If you can search on the internet, it can be helpful to you. I will also give you some ideas about this when we come to our maybe some of the next assignments. You can try to find out something about these concepts so that you understand that these are not mere theoretical topics. One of the problems that I normally face with material science is that to begin with, it happens to be a very what we refer to as a theoretical subject, but we need to add the practical information to that to make it more understandable and make it more interesting. That's what I keep on adding with this information available to us. Okay, so we already defined this here that the anisotropy can be observed in the case of single crystals, where you find that depending upon the crystallographic direction, the properties will vary. So we already said that one of the properties which can vary is the electrical conductivity, and maybe one of the optical properties is index of refraction, which can have different values along 100 and 111 direction. So we already know what is the meaning of this 110, 100 and 111. The extent and magnitude of the anisotropic effects in crystalline materials is function of the symmetry of the crystal structure. When you refer to the 7 crystal systems, I said that the symmetry is varying. The most symmetric crystal system happens to be a cubic one. The degree of anisotropy observed in single crystals now, keep it in mind, single crystals, increases with decreasing the crystal symmetry, means higher is the symmetry, higher is the, lower is the symmetry, less symmetric, more anisotropic. More symmetric means cubic, less anisotropic. So triclinic, which were on the other end, they are very less symmetric. They are highly anisotropic as far as single crystals of these materials are concerned. Okay, and this is some data which tells us about the values in different directions. These are actual data. So for aluminium, copper, tungsten, and iron, we find that the modulus of elasticity measured values along 100 direction, 110 direction, and 111 directions are shown here. We find they are very different. The highest ones are observed along 111 direction here. Then you have the 110. Then you have the 100. So we find the variation is there. So I already said that although single crystals can be anisotropic, but aggregately, because of the random orientation, we find that a polycrystalline material or a specimen which is of a polycrystalline material, it behaves isotropically. Okay, I will end my discussion here so that we can go to the quiz part after this. I will keep this class on, and I will post the quiz within a minute or two in your classroom. It will be again a 10-minute quiz, and I hope you will be able to solve it very easily using whatever information you have gathered. So I have uploaded and it must be visible in your box now. Yes. Have you received it?